I'm not an official Amazon representative or an Alexa representative, so everything I'm going to talk about is going to be based on my own experience, not like official Amazon lore, so don't quote me. Second, so I'm specifically on the Alexa Skills Kit team. And this is going to color kind of the content you guys are going to get. Alexa Skills Kit is the third-party developer set of tools and features. So if you are like, let's see if I have a, yes. If you are like Pizza Hut or My Pet Rock or Wikipedia, if you're building one of those skills, you're using my tool set, right? So I'm not smart home, I'm not automotive, I'm not any of those guys. There's like thousands and millions and zillions of people that work for Amazon. I'm just like this one little slice. Alexa Skills Kit, custom skills. And I also specifically focus on conversational multi-turn skills. So a lot of experiences with Alexa are kind of one shot, right? Where you're like, Alexa, what time is it? Or Alexa, what's the weather? Or that sort of thing. Those are just kind of one shot in and out experiences. I focus on the more multi-turn stuff like 20 questions or Jeopardy or My Pet Rock. If you haven't tried it, you should. It's not my skill, but it's very fun. And those are experiences where you're kind of having a dialogue back and forth with Alexa. And finally, I'm going to slip up a lot and say developer. So in my lexicon, a developer is a customer, right? Because I provide tooling for software developers or folks that are building skills. So when I say developer, just mentally map it to customer. If I'm actually talking about an Alexa user, I'll say either user or customer. So just some mental, shenanigans you'll have to do there. All right. So this is actually the official off the website description of voice user interface from Alexa. VUI allows people to use voice input, control computers and devices. Right? It's a very broad definition. Generally speaking, just think of it as all of the possible interactions, whether it's you saying something, Alexa saying something back, that allows you to get what you want done on a voice application. And these really are the driving force behind all this growth behind Google, Amazon. There's a lot of chatbots out there that use voice user interfaces also. So sometimes if you call up like your insurance company, a lot of folks have moved away from the old phone trees and now they're using these VUI interfaces, which are all driven by these machine learning platforms that do this stuff. And this is actually super important, even for devices with screens like the Echo Show, right? They're still voice first. So that means that in general, when developers create skills on them, they're using the screen to back up the voice experience. They're not doing it the other way around. So they're not going in and saying, I'm going to show something on the screen and then tell you what it is. They're usually telling you much more about what's going on and just showing you like a little cue on the screen to kind of move the conversation along. This is actually a big tenet of voice design and application design on these multimodal devices. Multimodal refers to a device that has either haptic input or visual inputs and outputs or that sort of thing. Just real quick, who actually has an Alexa device? Okay, cool. You people are my friends. Okay, so if done well, a good voice user interface will allow your users to speak naturally, right? So this means they don't have to memorize specific commands or specific paths through a skill to get what they want done. So they don't need to follow fixed flows. So if you think of like the old phone trees where you'd call up customer service and it would ask you a number of questions, right? That's what we try to avoid with voice user interfaces. We're trying to keep things very flat. We're trying to keep the ability for you as a user to follow non-linear dialogues anywhere you go, right? And it's easy to screw that up, but in general, the tools are there to not screw it up. And then obviously, if you do it well, your users will come back, right? A bad voice user interface is one that somebody shows up, they'll say something to the skill or to the bot, it mishears what they say and provides an answer back that is completely useless, much like Siri, and like that usually drives away customers. All right, so this is gonna be real basic, but just bear with me. There's actually three major components of a VUI interface. First, there's inputs, right? This is driven by spoken language understanding systems. This is anything the user is going to say to your skill or to your bot. Next, there's business logic. So you're going to take that input, You have usually some RESTful API endpoint sitting somewhere off in the cloud, and you're going to send a data payload to that endpoint. And it's going to do some database lookup, some crunching, like it's going to find out what it's going to say next. And then finally, there's a response. So after all that data crunching and that business logic, your bot or Alexa is going to turn around and provide a response back to the device, which then gets rendered to the user. And this whole thing is just a cycle, right? It's just over and over and over and over again if you have a multi-turn experience or skill. As a product manager, I actually focus primarily on the input side. And the reason for that is that these inputs are really driven by machine learning platforms. And that's super key because a lot of people don't realize it, and they try to develop these experiences not taking advantage of the ML portions, and it tends to create bad VUI. All right, so this is generically how this works. So user says something to the device takes that up, packages it into a stream, sends it off to platform services. This could be the Alexa platform, it could be the Google platform. And then it runs through a system called ASR. So this is automated speech recognition, where it's going to take that audio stream and try to convert it into tokenized words, right? And then it's going to take those tokenized words, which it's abstracted from this audio stream, and it's going to run it through a system called NLU, and this is natural language understanding. So it's going to try to take that string of words and figure out what the heck did the user actually mean with those words in this particular scenario. Once it gets that done, it's going to send a payload, usually like JSON or some data format, off to the actual endpoint of the skill. And this endpoint is not running on a platform, it's not running on Google, it's not running on Alexa, it's sitting off somewhere on either your server or AWS or wherever you want to run it. You're going to run your business logic, and then you're going to send a response back, which is going to go through a TTS system that's text to speech, plus some other stuff that's super squirrel secret stuff. And then once it does that, it's going to form an audio stream back, ship that down to the device, and then play that back to the user, right? So this means that the only logic that's really happening on the device is the part that collects the speech, ships it off, and then the part that when it gets an audio stream back from the cloud, it renders that into audio, actual audio from the speaker. So this part right here, this ASR NLU part, this is essentially called spoken language understanding. So this is the really key part of this whole system that makes it work. So I'm going to talk quite a bit about that. So first, SLU is the foundation of UX for VUI, right? So and we've all had experiences where you pick up either an Alexa device or Siri or something, you say something, it completely misinterprets it, and it blows up the entire experience because it's answering a question you didn't ask, and from that point forward, everything's shot, right? It's really hard to recover from when that happens. I'm just gonna wait, no, it's cool. And so SLU consists of those two systems I showed on the diagram earlier, ASR and NLU. ASR is the one that, as I mentioned, takes that audio stream and parses it out and looks for words. NLU is the part that then takes those words as inputs and renders what we call intents into the back end of the skill. If you think of early text-to-speech on your phone, where you talk to your phone, it would spit out the words on the screen before you sent a text, that's ASR. Newer systems on your phone actually use both ASR and NLU, because you'll notice sometimes you'll say a bunch of words, it'll spit them out on the screen, and then it'll change some of them. And what that's doing is running that NLU engine to say, wait a second, it's probably actually this other word that is meant here. But these two systems, generally speaking, for any SLU platform, need to go hand in hand, with the exception of bots. Sometimes bots, if you're talking about Lex, or I think the Google bot platform, will run just NLU. So you can just take any random text, shoot it into the system, it'll process that, and then send a normalized interpretation off to your backend. And actually, SLU authoring is a developer-facing product. And this is super key because that's much of what we focus on over in my neck of the woods. Okay, so this is how it works. Can you guys, that's probably hard to read, so I'll just read it for you. It says, ask gift ideas for a birthday gift. Then Alexa repeats or asks back, who is the gift for? The user responds, my mom, Lisa. And then Alexa responds with a question, what type of music does Lisa like? That's super messy, super really complex. Nobody likes it. So what SLU does conveniently is it converts that one little string right here, that my mom, Lisa, into this really easy to understand, really convenient data payload. And if you look carefully, you'll notice that there's some key things. There's the intent is right up there. And then there's your slot values. Slots are a term that references variables within the user speech that you want to collect as a user and use for your processing. So for instance, here, since I asked who is the gift for, I want to know who the gift is for. So I have convenient slots for the name Lisa and the relationship of mom, right? So this is essentially what that entire SLU pipeline does, is it takes something that is, for us, super easy to understand, crunches it into this big JSON payload and ships it off to the actual skill. There's a few other fancy things going on here. There's entity resolution, which is taking the term mom and converting it to a canonical value of mother. So there's some of that happening here too. But all of this is essentially the workings of this SLU engine. So just to roll through that whole pipeline in more detail, user says something, ASR produces this tokenized string. Tokens is just another word for words. And then NLU decomposes that down to an intent of pizza intent and a slot where maybe you as the developer said, I want to know what size pizza they want. It'll extract out that word large as a slot value for size, which is something you specify when you're defining your voice interface. Or, if you want to get really fancy, it could be an order intent and you're collecting both size and the item, right? Maybe you want to know, is it a large sheep? I don't know, something like that. Or if you really mess it up, you could get the wrong thing produced by NLU. You could get a customer complaint intent, or you could get the stop intent, or some other thing that NLU confuses this speech of I want a large pizza for something random. So machine learning models dictate these things, first off. In the model, if you think of Alexa, which has a collection of skills and domains being things like, once again, smart home, every one of these SLU models is unique for that part of the experience, right? And if you were here last week, one of the things that the gentleman really mentioned a lot is that if you're creating these ML models, it takes a lot of work and a lot of effort and a lot of investment. And I'm just going to steal some of his wording because I thought it was super cool, was if you're going to do ML modeling, you need people, processes, and tools. And to overlay on top of all of that, you need long-term investment. That is not going to fly for Alexa, right? Because we want to get big fast. Any platform that's trying to provide these interfaces, such as chatbots, like nobody's going to come along, Pizza Hut isn't going to come along and be like, oh, here's all my data scientists and all my tools and all my platform capabilities, and we're going to invest like millions of dollars in voice, even though there may not be an ROI immediately. So that's a huge problem for the growth of voice interfaces. So what we do, and what a lot of folks do in this space, is they actually productize the spoken language understanding authoring part of it. That means that the skill creators are the ones that provide the actual data to build these ML models, right? So machine learning is basically a process where you take data and you take expected results and you feed it through an engine, and out of the other side of that engine comes basically algorithms, right? And then what you do is at runtime, when somebody's actually using this model, you go the other way through and you take inputs and you run it through those algorithms, and then you get outputs, right? So the whole way that you get those algorithms is by providing a whole buttload of data. So what we do on the SLU side is we allow the person who's creating the skill to provide that data. The nice part is, since it's machine learning, they don't have to provide every single variation of what somebody's going to say. It's really only a sample or representative set of what you expect, generally speaking, anywhere from like 5 to 90% of what you expect somebody to say to build a model of varying effectiveness. The platform handles all of the machine learning stuff. So all of the part about the algorithms that are used to create the runtime algorithms, the sciencey stuff of tweaking like parameters for that sampling, all of that is stuff that's done by the platform. However, the model accuracy will depend greatly on the quality of the data provided. And so once again, this is a big problem because if you're talking about a voice application or an experience on a voice application like My Pet Rock, chances are pretty good that the person who's building that isn't an expert in data to train machine learning models, right? So that leads to all sorts of problems. So in practice, this is kind of what it looks like. I was going to grab screenshots, but they looked super crummy, so I did this via the slide options. So if I'm creating this gift idea intent, I'll sit around and I'll say, okay, well, somebody's probably going to say, I need a gift idea. So that's a sample. That goes into the list of sample data. And I'll say, well, they might actually say, I need a birthday gift idea. So instead of saying birthday, I'll say, okay, well, I want to generate this slot of occasion, right? And a slot is just a place where you insert a variable into this SLU model. And I'll say, okay, well, literally, I need an occasion, right, as a slot gift idea, okay? Then after some more thinking, I'll figure, well, they might say, give me a gift idea for my mom, right? So I'll insert a slot for relationship. And then I need a gift idea for my mom's birthday, maybe, right? People might say that. Recommend me something for my mom, Lisa. I need a birthday gift for my mom, Lisa. So you see how this is going, right? You got to think of like this wide variety of things that people may say to your skill. And very importantly, you have to correctly identify like where you think these variables are. Because if you don't do that, you're not going to get anything, right? So if you do this top one, this I need a gift idea, all you are going to get to your backend intent handler is an intent request that says gift idea intent. No other data, right? The other thing that happens here is if you notice, I provided all these slots. So I went in and said, okay, well, I'm going to need to know the occasion, relationship, name, right? Maybe I need to know some other things to recommend a gift. So what do I do if the user doesn't provide these on the first time around? So then I've got to go into this process of saying, okay, just like that kind of circular thing I showed earlier, I'm going to do some business logic. I'm going to realize I'm missing the name. I'm going to ask a question, what's your mom's name? And then I'm going to have to do this exact same modeling exercise for the response, right? So the user might say, Lisa, her name is Lisa. It's for Lisa, right? All these different variations that the user may say. We need to build that for every turn of the conversation. So it actually gets super complex, super fast, and you can probably guess that all these variations going into the SLU model you can have thousands of these utterances to make it really, really highly accurate. So obviously, a lot of energy can go into these SLU modeling tools, like a lot. And that's probably because it's super, super critical. If you were to do any Google searching on Alexa, you would find that we have all these various tools. We have built-in intents, right? So you've got, I mentioned like the birthday gift thing was an intent. We have built-in intents for stop, cancel, help, right? These are all these packages of sample utterances, these things are called sample utterances. So we have these built-in pre-grouped packages of sample utterances that you can just plug into your experience and it'll resolve into that intent request. We have custom intents. So I've got my birthday gift thing. Amazon doesn't care about birthday gifts, so I'm going to build it. So I'll do what I just did on the previous slide. We also have like this whole process of authoring intent sample utterances. I kind of showed you a representation of that. We have slots, which is that little variable you stick in the utterance. We have slot sample utterances. So if you ask a question like, oh, what's your mom's name? We allow you to provide sample utterances for specifically that question. We have built-in list slot types. So we've got lists of like every single state and every city and like 5 zillion names in Europe, right? You can just pull those in and drop them in. We have a slot suggester service that allows you to kind of figure out what slot should I use. We have grammar-based slots, so zip codes and phone numbers and email addresses and all that crud. We have custom slot types. So if none of that stuff is good enough, you can create your own list of pizza toppings or relationships or that sort of thing. We allow you to specify synonyms. So if you say mom and mother and mommy and like all those weird variations that you grew up with, you can do that. We have this intent history thing, which as a developer allows you to see what are people even saying to your skill in the first place, and like, do I need to change things, and is it responding correctly to what people are asking for? We have all these authoring user interfaces and APIs. So there is a lot of stuff we do to make this usable and to make this effective and powerful. And every one of these voice platforms does incredibly similar things, right? Different platforms have different tools. Bot platforms have a slightly different set of tools, but in general, people invest a huge, huge pile of energy into making it so non-machine learning scientists can model all these variations in the easiest way possible. But people still get it wrong. So a lot can go wrong here. This is the exact same back end of a skill. And once again, I know you guys probably can't read this too well, but I'll just go through the key points. Exact same back end of a skill, but two different interaction models, right? One is super lightweight, that's the first one. And the second one is a little more robust. And what happens here is when the skill asks the user who the gift is for, this is that same gift ideas thing, the user says, my friend Karen, right? In this case, there's a slot that's looking to collect that last piece of the conversation and is just going to call that the name. So what it does is it says, oh, the person's name is friend Karen. And then it asks, what's your friend Karen's name? And the user's like, her name is Karen. And then it collects that and like assumes that's the name. And it says, what type of music does her name is Karen prefer? And at this point, the user experience is probably totally shot. The user says, go back, and like the skill does something like really, really crummy. This actually happens a lot when you're talking about design of these interaction models. The one on the right is slightly different. It's been built with a better schema of slots where it's got a sample it's expecting. Maybe you're going to say friend Karen, right? So it goes through, I need a birthday gift idea. Who's the gift for? The user says, my friend Karen, and then the skill says, okay, great. I'm going to look in those slots. I'm going to pick out friend as a relationship. I'm going to pick out Karen as the name. I'm going to fill those with my business logic, and then I can turn around and move on with life, and I'm not going to blow up the user experience. The unfortunate thing for this type of deal is the back end of the skill has no way of knowing what the user actually said if your model doesn't provide accurate data, right? So if you don't provide the right schema of slots and intents, the back end of your skill is just going to execute whatever it gets. It's just getting a JSON payload, and it will have no clue whatsoever what's going wrong until the user starts swearing. And then at that point, you're done. So you're probably wondering, or some of you are probably wondering, that's great. That's a lot of science-y stuff and modeling stuff. Like, but what do the product managers do in this whole scheme? Like, what's your job, bro? So product managers or product teams define features and tools that democratize creation of great voice user interfaces. I said that just now. And we do it through writing narrative memorandums. Anybody here know anybody who works for Amazon, has heard of Amazon? Yeah, that's basically what we do. We write narrative memorandums. But seriously, what we spend the vast majority of our time doing is coordinating with, like, we have these big giant science teams all over the country that are thinking of like these great ways to do really science-y things and provide like all these cool dials for modeling that people can tweak and turn and all that stuff. But a lot of times the developers don't want to actually use those things, right? People have their own approach to building these experiences. And so our biggest job as product managers is to figure out where is the industry going, where do actual voice developers today want their skills to be, and what tools are they looking for to solve problems? Because you can release stuff all day long and no problems actually get solved because nobody implements it. So there's some really key things here. One is, like, if you're going to do this type of job, ordering a pizza is really hard. So if you think about that scenario I went through where it's just that gift ideas intent, if you take that and you blow it up to ordering a pizza, right? You can call up the pizza place, you can be like, I want a large pizza. I want a large pizza with pepperoni. I want a large pizza with pepperoni, extra cheese. I want 2 large pizzas, one with pepperoni, one with extra cheese. And there's all these variations. So creating voice models for that sort of thing is actually super, super, super hard. And that is, in reality, what a lot of the machine learning teams that work on voice interfaces try to solve, is actually the problem of how do you order a pizza? How do you model ordering a pizza and all the variations that can happen there? The second thing is, a lot of these skill creators, like, either they don't know there's a machine learning platform, they just don't care, right? So the big thing the machine learning platforms do is it makes it so you don't have to provide every bit of sample data. It also makes it so you don't have to do string parsing, you don't have to like write all these business rules, all these if switches everywhere to try to get the user experience to where you want it to be. You just provide a representative sample set, anywhere from realistically probably 30 to 40% of what you expect users to say, and the other 70% gets handled by the ML platform. It turns out people just don't care about all that. What they actually want is just raw text. They want to get exactly the text what the user said, and they want to parse it through like a text parser or if switches and just pull out the words they're looking for, which is a lot more work, but people seem to want to do it. It's amazing. It's hard to get people, even in voice, to adopt new capabilities. So if you think about it, voice, Alexa, Google, it's all moving super fast. I think Alexa Skills Kit was created 3 years ago, right? So every week, every month, like a pile of new features are coming out. But these are features that developers have to adopt and build into their code and run like all their development pipelines. So it turns out that by and large, nobody wants to adopt new features, right? So from a product manager standpoint, you really have to make sure you're solving a problem. And that problem that people care about is accuracy, SLU accuracy. If you can solve SLU accuracy problems, you are a hero. If you're not solving those problems, nobody cares, and they're going to keep working with the code and the features they have. And one of the biggest SLU problems that developers care about is ASR, because that's one thing that is very hard to control versus NLU, which you can do all this modeling for and kind of steer stuff where you want it to be. ASR is much tougher. There is actually a huge market out there for end-to-end experience design. So we focus on the ML stuff. We focus on SLU authoring because that's the productized ML component where we can take this platform that does all this great ASR and NLU stuff and allows any random person to show up and create a voice app that has reasonably effective spoken language understanding. So we don't worry about the outputs. We don't worry about the rest of that cycle where it's business logic and responses. We don't do anything for that. But it turns out there's a lot of companies that do. And there's actually a lot of emerging companies that do. So if you're looking for a great business idea in voice, I would actually recommend that. There's companies like Voice Apps and Storyline and Polestring. And these are all companies that have created ways for you as an individual to create an end-to-end experience versus just build an SLU model. And actually the voice-enabled apps and devices you see today are not it. I guarantee it. There's a pile of new devices coming down the line in the next 5 years, guaranteed. The use cases, the killer use cases for voice aren't there yet. If you think about like all the stuff you can do right now, it's pretty much limited to a little device that sits on your desk. In 20 years, you probably have a robot walking around your house, and you're not going to interact with that robot via an app or a keyboard. It's going to be through voice. And those are the use cases that are going to come along and really blow up the industry, and they're just not there yet. So I would strongly recommend that everybody actually put some thought into where they think the future is going here. Maybe it's a drone that you can throw up in the air and be like, hey, I'm going to go skiing and follow me 10 meters and start filming after 30 seconds, right? All these experiences are things that are coming, and I recommend people start working on them. So that's actually it. I didn't have much, believe it or not. One thing that I forgot to mention right off the bat is, as an Amazon employee, I actually don't do slides. It's not something. So super fast, super low test. Any questions? I'll go in the back first because those ones are tough.
I see like a lot of skills are coming onto your platform. Like, is there monetization for
Yeah. So once again, as a non-representative of Amazon, I can say if you were to Google that, you could very quickly find that yes, there is monetization. So there are mechanisms for monetization. It's interesting. Once again, this is just my personal take on it. People invest in things that make them money, right? So if you look at apps, especially, like that's an ecosystem that started out very small. Like you had the app that looked like you were drinking beer, the one that would make you smile weird. But all of that was like really, really hokey stuff until monetization started coming along and in-app purchases came along, and now there's subscriptions. That same life cycle is bound to happen with voice applications. So I know on the Amazon platform there is monetization that's just rolled out recently. Publicly, not secretly. Yeah.
Thank you, Jules, for sharing this great presentation. So you said in your job as a product manager in Amazon, you write some narrative memorandum.
Yes.
What kind of questions you need to answer, and how's the process of coming out the memorandum?
Yeah. So I apologize if I bore anybody on this, but I'm going to plug this whole memorandum process really quick. So it's referred to as like a PR FAQ, right? Press release FAQ. And what it is you start with the press release, like the public-facing press release. It's not the real press release, but you kind of fake it up. And the whole purpose of that part, which is actually the most important part, even though it's the cheesiest part, is to convince everybody who's going to work on the project what the value is and what people are going to say about it once it's live. And then after that, you usually have about 5 to 10 pages of FAQs, right, which is the nuts and the bolts of why are we doing this, why will developers like it, why will customers like it, how are we going to execute on it, what's the technical architecture, what is the scope of the project, what are we going to provide in the UI, so all the details for that. It's basically one step above a functional requirements document. So I'm guessing a bunch of folks are familiar with functional requirements and technical requirements. It's one step above that. It's kind of like PRFAQ, functional requirements, technical requirements, and then engineering docs below that. Yep.
So there are a lot of developers who are developing the skills,
yep.
But how is Amazon creating the awareness of the skills to the users?
Yeah. So if you were to Google it, what you'd find is that there's a few programs out there, such as programs where they take certain very common things that people say to Alexa, and they'll find like a good skill to route it to. There's also programs where you as a developer can opt into kind of these what essentially shake out to be, not really SEM type of things, but similar, where you can opt into serving certain requests. And there's some arbitration mechanisms that happen there. But that's past that, it's really up to the individual developer to find a way to push their content.